Hello. Having grown up as a Baptist in a strongly predominantly Jewish neighborhood, I grew up assuming that it was absolutely normal for school attendance to drop down to 25 or 30% of its normal levels during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I often also wondered if God expects Gentile Christians to observe the Sabbath, and if so, are we to do it the same way that the Jewish people do? Now, to make it clear, I do not think that Sunday is the new Sabbath. From the earliest, Sunday was observed as the Lord's Day because that is when Jesus rose from the dead. Saturday, the Sabbath, right from the very beginning, the seventh day. So Sunday is not the new Sabbath. My name is Peter Albright, and I am Accessible Fellowship's Bible Study Facilitator. We spent June discussing work and covered a lot of territory. This week, starting July 7th, we will be looking at a different perspective of work. We will be looking at rest. Our scripture for this week is Exodus 16. So, are we to observe the Sabbath? There's no question about the fact that the Israelites were absolutely commanded to observe the Sabbath as a day set apart as holy for God. It's part of the Ten Commandments. It shows up in Exodus chapter 20, command number 4. It's ordained to be apparently eternal in Exodus 31. In Numbers 15, we see that failure to keep the Sabbath was considered a capital offense, worthy of death. Today's religious Jews generally give the opinion that Christians should not observe the Sabbath. They say that the Sabbath observance is reserved as a special privilege for the Jews, exclusively. They sometimes mention persecution by the Christians as a reason that Christians should not be observing Sabbath. And besides, they often say, Gentiles wouldn't have a clue how to do it. They just wouldn't know. On the other hand, we know that many Gentile Christians do observe the Sabbath, with various traditions and various practices, with various restrictions. We can ask what Jesus would do, and we see in Scripture that Jesus and his disciples observed the Sabbath carefully, consistently. Jesus did draw the line at observing the Sabbath according to the legalism that had been added by the religious leaders of the day. We jump to the New Testament and see that Paul, in many scriptures, such as Acts 15, Romans 7, Colossians 2, 1 Corinthians 9, talks about the fact that Gentile Christians are not subject to Jewish law. But in most of those scriptures, he's talking specifically about circumcision and or diet. And it seems, upon careful reading, that his intention is not to tell Gentiles that there are things that they have to do to please God, but rather that there are things that they should do so as not to offend Jewish Christians. Like you, I've listened to many sermons preached about how to observe the principle of the Sabbath. But what if God's intention for our observation of the Sabbath is not what rules we should observe about things that we should not do, but rather if God's intention for us is to look at the Sabbath as an opportunity, a chance to look at what we can do and what we should do on a day of rest. A rest that is ordained by virtue of the fact that we have been created in the image of God. I'd like to welcome you to join us in our Bible study Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock. You'll find information on joining us below. You'll also will find information on contacting us by email. And I thank you very much for watching this podcast. Go in peace.